Good morning. How'd you survive day one? Okay? Everyone go to the gym this morning, work out. You ready for this talk? Okay. I'm Amy Summers. I'm president and founder of Pitch Publicity and NisiVox, and I have the privilege and honor of introducing our first guest speaker this morning. Dr. Douglas Kalman is a clinical associate professor at Nova Southeastern University and co-founder of Substantiation Sciences, a strategic nutrition consultancy. With a vast background in clinical trials, scientific publications, he's co-founder and co-editor for the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition. Dr. Kalman's expertise has impacted Olympic and professional athletes, and he's been featured on major media outlets. And since we are talking sports this morning, this was not on the script, I'm gonna go with it. I'm wearing garnet and gold to make Doug comfortable, because I'm a Gator. He may not know that. And if you're not from Florida or you don't know anything about the SEC, you probably have no idea what we're talking about right now, but trust me, this is a compliment that I'm wearing garnet and gold for you. So I'm gonna turn it over and I'll be back with your questions after.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Amy. Can everybody hear me okay? Everybody can hear okay? So, just so you know, you can show announcements. If you need Wi-Fi, here's the information. So now, moving ahead, Amy gave you a little bit of my background. I'm happy to share the slides with anybody afterwards. I believe you can get them through the app and through the show, but here's my contact information. So what is nutritional neurosciences? The body is a complex system. We know this. So nutritional neurosciences is a scientific discipline that centers on how do the impact of dietary components impact neurochemistry, neurobiology, and what is the impact on memory, executive function, behavior, and cognition. This includes and transfers over to what are the impacts on feelings of well-being, aka mental health. So neuroscience or nutritional neuroscience integrates nutrition. So for example, our brain, we all have brains, right? At your resting energy expenditure right now, about 20 to 25% of your calorie needs are just for your brain. So 1/4 to 1/5 of all energy needs that you need for homeostasis in your body are just required by this 3-pound small little thing in your head. That is high energy demand for a small organ. So the thing to understand is how can you feed or ingest for optimal brain support for the now and for when 40 years down the road as you age. So nutrition, again, has an impact on the brain throughout the life cycle. Example, those people that follow a high saturated fat diet, right? High saturated fat diets are associated with significantly increased risks of Alzheimer's disease, right? That is a neurological disease that is, unless it's genetically predisposed in you, is highly avoidable by dietary and lifestyle choices. Interestingly enough, we also know that iron deficiency, insufficiency and deficiency is strongly correlated with depression. So I always ask when I'm working, I teach in a medical school, and when I'm teaching the young residents, well, did you know that 30 to 50% of pregnant women are iron insufficient or deficient? Do you test your pregnant women? Do you coach them on how to eat to increase their iron? They're eating for 2. What is the impact on brain development? And we'll talk about that. So neuroscience is devoted to understanding the nervous system and its core component, the brain. So we focus on brain and behavior, cognitive function. This is interdisciplinary. So traditionally, neuroscience didn't include anything to do with nutrition because nobody thought about that there's a physiologic and a metabolic connection between the two. But we believe it's very strong. For those of you that have an interest in the neurosciences, here are different fields within neuroscience: affective behavior, behavioral, clinical, cognitive development, and so forth. These are different areas within the neurosciences that one can specialize in. So what about our nervous system? We have 2 classes: your central nervous system, your processing unit, and your peripheral nervous system. But your peripheral nervous system is impacted by sensory afferent impacts, motor, somatic, autonomic, sympathetic, and parasympathetic, the rest and digest, if you will. And the picture on the right hand of your slide gives you an idea about your central nervous system and then the peripheral. This is important because of how nutrition impacts both of these. This is a little bit too in-depth to read and go over with you, but when you have your own slide deck and you want to learn later, each of these gives a further definition of what does the CNS do, what does the PNS do, what is the sensory division, what is the somatic sensory response, how do we impact motor control, and so forth. So again, is nutritional neuroscience as simple as an apple a day? How many of you had any polyphenols yet today? Not the red wine you may have had last night, okay? So polyphenols are found in apples. Polyphenols have antioxidant activity. Polyphenols are actually associated with positive cognitive functions. Now, I'm going to start in an area of nutrition that I love, the gut, because without it, we can't eat and digest. And why is this so important? Having a healthy, intact GI system is your first stop, if you will, to where nutrients are absorbed. How many of you know anybody with irritable bowel or inflammatory bowel disease, IBD? Okay, that is an inflamed gut. An inflamed gut will have disruption of its ability to absorb all of these nutrients, especially those in the ileum, jejunum, and duodenum, your small intestine. I share this because a difference in absorption abilities throughout your duodenum, jejunum, and ileum, focusing on your small intestine, affects your body's ability to produce neurotransmitters and to do other things that are very involved in the neurological system. So let's start with the basics, right? If we're going to talk about nutrition, we're going to do a quick overview of the macronutrients. We have carbs, proteins, and fats. Our bodies require these, right? These provide energy, help maintain structure of the body, provide functional integrity to cells, and so forth. Why do we start here? Well, monosaccharides are one sugar molecules, di is two sugars, poly are your more complex carbohydrates. These serve as an energy source for what? Your central nervous system and for your red blood cells. Your central nervous system prefers carbohydrate for energy. Preference doesn't mean essential. Please don't confuse those two. Your brain prefers glucose for energy, but can also use ketones. Prefers does not mean essential. I bring this up because if you want to have a primed brain for optimal thinking, memory, cognition right now, as well as over time, maintaining healthy blood sugar levels impacts that. And dietary choices impact that. Did you know that diets that are high in simple sugars, meaning diets that are high in simple sugars, also correlate with significantly increased mild cognitive decline and Alzheimer's as one ages? So imagine if you followed, or somebody followed, none of us in this room, but plenty of Americans do, a high sugar, high fat diet. You're setting yourself up for cognitive failure before you're the age of 55. We'll go through this. Does carbohydrate type matter for function, for cognition? So here I'm just sharing a study that compared low carbohydrate diet versus low fat diet and the impacts on mood states. Remember, there is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. You don't die without carbohydrates, you just get moody. There are such things as essential amino acids, proteins, and essential fats. So why does this have an impact? Because here we are able to look at an outcome. And this was a very, very strong study, 106 obese people, again, splitting them, looking low fat versus low carb over a year. And what did they found? Yes, weight loss was very similar over that year. But those people that were on the low carbohydrate diet were miserable. Their mood states were negative. They had a negative affect. So what great is it if you're skinny but you're really rude to everybody, right? Your mindset impacts your mental wellness. So I'm trying to help you draw the connection in between outcomes here. So here, just take a look at this. We know that those people that have diets that are higher again in the simple sugars, refined carbohydrates, have an increased, enhanced, unfortunate ability for obesity and metabolic diseases And this has a negative impact on the ability to preserve cognitive function over time. It's not only how well you think now, but you also want to be in your 70s and 80s and still be mentally sharp, right? Or most of us want to be. So now we're going to move into protein. We're limited on time. At Nova Southeastern University, I teach a whole semester on this. I teach a nutritional neuroscience course. So I have a whole semester to go deeper into this. Here we have less than 30 minutes to cover something that's not topical, but is topical. Cognitive nutrition matters. So here, protein. Why does this become important? We have essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids. Essential you must get from the diet. Protein is probably the most important macronutrient, if you ask me, for a number of reasons. A number of reasons. Let's look into some of them. Did you know that proteins, amino acids, are used to synthesize your neurotransmitters? And we're going to go a little bit deeper into this. But if you take a look at this picture, giving you an idea of a neuron and how excitement across the nerve impulses transmit, we're going to go into how B vitamins, how fatty acids impact the production of your myelin sheath, the sheath that covers your nerves, right? And we're going to go into how the production of serotonin, norepinephrine, epinephrine is related to your dietary intake. Let's go into it right now. There are three major categories of neurotransmitters, nutritional neuroscience, neurotransmitters. These are amino acids that are used for fast synaptic transmission. They could either be inhibitory or excitatory, and these primarily are glutamic acid, gamma-aminobutyric acid, aspartic acid, and glycine. Again, amino acids are your most abundant neurotransmitters within your central nervous system. Then we have another class of amine neurotransmitters that are amine groups. We traditionally call these biogenic amines, and these are your catecholamines. So these are nerve transmitters that are in slow synaptic transmission. These also could be inhibitory or excitatory, and this would be noradrenaline, adrenaline, dopamine, serotonin, and histamine. And then we have others, a whole nother category of amino acid-based neurotransmitters like acetylcholine and nitric oxide. So why does protein have such an importance for nutritional neuroscience? Your aromatic amino acids, right? These are where we get tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine from. These are your direct precursors for serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. Why does this matter? Let's say for some reason you have somebody that is following a very strict vegan or vegetarian diet and has the protein portion of their diet is less than 12% of their total calories. Are they getting enough essential amino acids that the body needs to adequately and properly synthesize the neurotransmitters? No. Your diet has a direct impact on your body's ability to synthesize serotonin, feelings of wellness, calm, sleep, and a few other things. Dopamine, used for energy, excitement. Norepinephrine, part of your fight and flight hormones. So these are things that are very important. The other amino acids which play a very strong role in central nervous system activity are listed here. Your glutamic acid, aspartic acid, glutamine, cysteine, methionine, proline, and so forth. So since this is also the dietary supplement industry, one of the things that the dietary supplement industry is allowed to do as related to marketing claims are structure function claims. And when you understand the mechanism of action of how an agent, a chemical, a nutritional works in the body, you can understand the structure function claim. So just showing you some examples how lysine is used for carnosine synthesis and beta oxidation or fat burning, or phenylalanine is used to synthesize dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter. So diets that have more than adequate essential amino acids support healthy cognitive function through healthy neurotransmitter function and a few other things through these direct roles that are listed here. So we're all here in Vegas. What's one of the number one things that happens in Vegas besides staying in Vegas? Sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation, right? We all are not getting our normal sleep habits. We're out and about, socializing, doing whatever you do. Why has this become important? There are some studies that we have been involved with that have looked at, well, what portion of the protein in a diet impacts sleep quality? And this was very interesting because, again, sleep is impacted by melatonin production, right? It is also impacted by serotonin synthesis and circadian rhythms of serotonin throughout the day. Well, this research found that diets that had at least 1.5 grams per kilogram of protein had better sleep quality. And that also translated to better sleep quality, to a healthier microbiome, to enhanced or better supported cognitive function. There's a connection. The gut is also called the second brain for a reason. So now let's move into fats. I'm sorry we're a little bit limited on time. When it comes to dietary fats, predominantly dietary fats, the fat that's in food is in triglyceride form, and the fat that our bodies store is also in triglyceride form. I want to mention these because the dietary fat types, saturated fat, fat that's solid at room temperature, the mono and polyunsaturated fats, fats that are healthier for your heart and your vascular system, and essential fats, fats that we must get from the diet, our body will not produce, all play a predominant role in neurological health. So let's take an example how. Well, from fatty acetyls, meaning monoglycerides, diglycerides, triglycerides, our bodies will take that and break that down into eicosanoids, docosanoids, fatty alkaloids, and aldehydes that are used, again, for a neurological function. This is just giving you an example of the function, structure-function relationship in between the type of lipids and what they do in the body. So these become very important because things like sphingolipids, sphingomyelin, glycinolipids are used again in nerve transmission and neurological health. So can your diet and the component of the fat portion of your diet impact your mental health? And the answer is yes. A matter of fact, by the proportion of your diet that's made up of saturated fat versus polyunsaturated fat also impacts your microbiome, right? We all have about 2 kilos of live bacteria, fungi, and archaea and bacteria that lie in our gut, known as our microbiome. The makeup of that bacterial, the makeup of your microbiome also impacts your body's ability to synthesize serotonin and other neurotransmitters. What happens is when you have a diet that's high in saturated fat, that's actually more pro-inflammatory because of the saturated fatty acids that are comprised in your diet. And that induces systemic inflammation, which over time can have a negative impact on dopamine production, peripheral insulin resistance, peripheral cytokine release, which is more pro-inflammatory release, body fat levels, and so on and so forth. So there's a direct connection in between the type of fat that comprises your diet and your cognitive health, and of course your microbiome. So again, we already know that the brain uses about 20 to 25% of your resting energy needs. But what about other aspects of nutrition? So for glial cells, which is a type of neuron, a type of cell in the brain, right, requires not only fats, but requires biotin, right? The formation and energy production of all neurons require biotin. Biotin is not just hair, skin, and nails, that's what it's sold for, but biotin is used for a cognitive function. With glucose metabolism in the brain and throughout the body, it requires an adequate intake of thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, pantothenic acid, lipoic acid, magnesium, iron, manganese too. How many of you got more than adequate magnesium yesterday in your diet? How many had like a pound of nuts or seeds? Not many of us, right? Yes, people may take a multivitamin with minerals, either as an insurance bill or as health promotion or health support, but there's a whole segment of society that, of course, does not specifically purposely look to supplement. Yes, any food that is fortified or enriched is a supplemental form of nutrition, yes? But we also have to understand that those people that are restrictive eaters, i.e. dieters, are restricting their dietary intake of not only calories, but vitamins, minerals, and other phytonutrients that our bodies need. So when you restrict your intake of these required B vitamins and other vitamins, it has a negative impact on the optimal production and function of your neurological system, which then impacts, of course, mental health and wellness and other things. Again, for neurotransmitter synthesis, yes, you need the B vitamins, but you also need vitamin C, zinc, and choline. How many of you had oysters last night? Okay, he got zinc. Very impressive, very good. How many of us had that within our diet? I'm pointing these things out because this is very, I think, very important. An underappreciated function of vitamin C is also being required for neurotransmitter synthesis. Vitamin C is most promoted for what? Helping to maintain a healthy immune system. But here, what about a healthy neurological function? What about healthy neurotransmitter synthesis? What about healthy mood states? Then when we talk about, well, if we have neurons and we have cells and we have the myelin sheath that covers it, right? It's the erosion of that myelin sheath that's associated with Parkinson's disease. Well, that myelin sheath, the integrity of it, is impacted by your folate and B12 intake. How many of you had 5 servings of green leafy vegetables yesterday? Where else are you getting your folate? Okay, so I may make mock or make joke, but reality is people don't necessarily have their 5 to 9 fruits and vegetables today. They don't have 25 to 37 grams of fiber per day, right? Look around America, we have these issues. And these are very real because what happens is there's a cognitive dissonance when you go to your physician for your yearly checkup. They look at you and they say, you look healthy, you're well developed, well nourished, and because they don't see any overt scurvy in anybody, they don't think that there's a vitamin or mineral insufficiency that can impact your mental wellness or well-being. Okay? Again, my take home for this slide is for healthy CNS metabolism, we need a heck of a lot of vitamins and minerals to be in adequate supply. Another example is you need B6, you need B12 and folate in adequate supply to help maintain healthy homocysteine levels, which is also impacted, of course, by the amount of sulfur-containing molecules in your diet. And why does this become an impact, and why would I raise this? Because your B6 and B12 intake impact the metabolism of homocysteine, and elevated levels of homocysteine are correlated with cardiovascular disease and with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So if you can maintain healthy levels of homocysteine by having adequate dietary intake and leading a healthy lifestyle, you're reducing your risks relatively of these cognitive and other diseases. So it's often overlooked. There's a lot of words on this slide. What I wanted to share about this slide was that there's a strong, significant relationship in between iron insufficiency, low levels of iron, or iron deficiency and depression, even when you control for every other variable in a human's life. And it's often underappreciated when a person presents to their healthcare practitioner and tells them, I don't feel myself, I'm a little malaise, I have a little fatigue, I'm irritable, if you're self-aware enough to realize that you're having a problem. The doctors most often say, okay, let's have cognitive behavioral therapy and talk about it, versus maybe just doing some simple blood, mineral, vitamin test may help a root cause, right? So this is often overlooked. That's basically what this says. So iron, brain development, and behavioral health. Over 50 studies demonstrate between 6 months of age and 2 years that those babies that had insufficient iron intake either in utero while the mother was pregnant or post birth had motor and cognitive delays, and that these cognitive delays were even observational by testing 19 years after they were born. Okay? So this is a silent epidemic, if you ask me. Maybe epidemic's not the right word, but a silent, real concern amongst women's health, and any baby that's born for what you do now impacts them for the next 20 years or longer. So here we also are able to see that the brain doesn't function the same, and it takes a couple years, 4 years after being repleted to have normal iron levels for that brain metabolism to normalize. Okay? This is very, very important and overlooked. And when you're thinking about this in medicine, why would this start? Because this is demyelination of the nerve cells that's occurring. So moving on, in medicine there's a saying, when you hear hoofbeats, you think horses, not zebras, right? So this was an interesting case study of a 58-year-old woman who was a cancer patient, and she attempted suicide, and she was brought into the hospital. and she was assessed by the psycho-oncology department. That's a department of psychiatry, psychology that specializes in oncology, psycho-oncology. When I used to work at Memorial Sloan Kettering, this is one of the groups that I worked in Department of Psychiatry and Psycho-Oncology. And one of the things that was interesting, she presented with symptoms of major depression, and lo and behold, the doctors thought, you know, she's not really eating, she lost weight, she's majorly depressed, she's suicidal. I'm betting you there's a thiamine deficiency, B1. And within an hour of IV infused thiamine, she was normalized, right? And of course, you're still held in the hospital to make sure you're still not suicidal and just putting it behind. But basically, the suicidal ideation and attempted suicide thoughts went away. And this was all from a thiamine deficiency that was induced by her not really eating because she was during cancer treatment. So these are real things that happen to people that often get overlooked, but thankfully some doctor wasn't saying, oh, she's just depressed because she's got metastatic cancer and the time clock is real. So again, I want to just bring this up, that these are things to think about. So to me, the nutritional neuroscience is a fascinating area. It's an emerging area of science. It's an opportunity to me also for industry to think more whole person, mental health, mental well-being, not only in the now, but preserved neurological function over time. And to me, that means that nutritional neurosciences are about life cycle nutrition, because it happens from in utero through the rest of your life. So as science and applications grow, so will overall awareness. Again, I'm sorry that this has been a little bit abbreviated. We only had 30 minutes. I welcome all of you to move to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and enroll in Nova Southeastern University to take my course on this. But this is an area, again, that I think that is underappreciated, yet you can go around and you'll see plenty of cognitive nutrition kind of products being promoted, but we need to translate this science to help consumers and companies to help connect why nutrition is so important for neurological health and mental well-being. So with that, thank you, and questions we're happy to entertain. Bono impressions I cannot do.
Does anyone have a question? I think we have time for maybe one. Oh, okay, I saw this hand go first, so we'll go here.
Okay, so we talk a lot about all these different nutrients and the effect they have in the body. How does that translate into actual conversion? So bioavailability, you take it in, I put L-theanine in my formula, it's ingested, but then you got to get it through the gut, into the blood in order to be able to have this effect. So how does a company figure out, I mean, the mechanism of action is great from there, but we've got to have an understanding of what happens as it gets into the body, whether it converts or transitions or translates or whatever it does. So how does that work with a lot of these key ingredients? Vitamins we know, but a lot of the others.
So that is a great question. And I'm going to go back to this. You first need a healthy, intact gut for optimal absorption of any nutrient, including even water, right? Water is reabsorbed in your distal colon, but if you have a problem with polyps and you have a problem with constipation, you're not reabsorbing sodium and fluid in your distal colon. So why is this so important? And how does this affect relative absorption? When you talk about bioavailability, that's more about how companies put together their ingredients, whether it's a synthetic or a natural form, whether it's a salt form, that has more to do with that type of aspect, right? When it comes to human, it's really about having a healthy gastrointestinal tract and having either normal inflammation levels. That's what I would key in on. And how do we get that? It's by a diverse diet. It's by a diverse diet. And diversity is something that people talk about, but the more colorful your plate is, fruits and vegetables, the more diverse amount of phytochemicals you're getting. People often overlook, in America, we're supposed to be getting 25 to 37 grams of fiber per day for women and men respectively. The average American gets less than 12 to 15 grams of fiber per day. So how are we going to have a healthy microbiome when we can't even tolerate, all brand cereal, Right? So these are things that we have educational opportunities with the consuming public about why lifestyle choices are so important.
Thank you, everybody. I'm sure Doug will be around for a little bit later if people have questions for you. But we're at 11 o'clock, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And just wanted to highlight to 5 o'clock, there is a What's Up with Sups event happening. I think there's a costume required, but it's Vegas. You figure it out. All right, have a great day, guys.
Thank you, everybody.